Welcome back to The Functional Operator. This episode is brought to you by Nautilus AI Solutions. Today I'm sitting down with Dade Ronan. Really excited to have this conversation. Excited to have you on, Dade. And, before we get into anything about the business or dive too deep in anything, I'd love for you to just share a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your upbringing, your journey, and how you got to what you're doing today.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me, Noah. I really appreciate it. Yeah, my
Of course.
background started in, we'll just go back into the late 80s, where I was going to college and I got addicted to vodka. And we had a graduation party coming up, and I tried to drink too much and I passed out and I almost died, laying on my back, and I was vomiting. And my friends had enough sense to roll me over so I didn't drown in my vomit. Well, they picked me up, they cleaned up the mess, and took me to my apartment 2 miles away, the second story, and into my bathroom and into my shower. And they took all my clothes off and washed me down and cleaned me up and put new clothes on me and put me in my bed. And 2 days later, Sunday evening, I woke up and I thought
So
it
you
was
were
Saturday
asleep for
night.
2 days.
Yeah, I had blacked out. And so I almost died from that experience, from alcohol addiction. So I would go back to my friends and wanted to talk to them and talk about the experience. And they were all upset and yelling, screaming, and cussing at me. And so I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior back in uh, February 2nd, 1983, 11:45 a.m. And that was the most important day in my life because it changed my eternal destiny from eternal separation from God to eternal life with God. And that's the most important date that anybody could have, is the date of their destiny, of their eternal soul. So I go back to my apartment and I get down on my hands and knees and ask God to take away my addiction, take away my craving, take away my desire for vodka that I had when I was drinking 1 or 2 glasses a day. And just like that, he gave me a miracle. He delivered me and provided me the ability to not have any more cravings, not have no more desire. And I haven't had a drop of alcohol ever since 1990. So I've been 35 years clean, sober, and not a drop of
Amazing.
any alcohol. So
That
with
is
that
amazing.
as the premise, later down the road, in the mid 90s, I met my wife in Bible college, and she was born and raised here in Wichita, Kansas, which is where we're at now. And I became a pastor, and we started pastoring, and we moved back to Kansas. And in 2004, I had started getting into, in the late 90s, web development, because Y2K was real popular. And in 2004, I started my first business, web hosting and web development company. I've been doing web development ever since, and I've had a bunch of other companies that I've worked for over the years, big Fortune 500 companies. And so I had several different 401ks, and my friend said, "Hey, you ought to invest in commercial property." And I said, "Okay, well, what should I invest in?" And he said, "Yeah, look into strip malls." So I bought a strip mall. Well, I had some more uh, income that I wanted to invest in, and I went to buy another strip mall. And my strip mall that the first one that I had two strip malls butted up next to each other. And I was talking to my neighbor, and I told him I was looking to buy a strip mall. And he said, "Well, do you want to buy mine?" And I said, "You mean the one right next door to me?" And he said, "Yeah." So my wife and I were meeting with him for lunch, and we're talking to him about buying his strip mall. And he said, "Well, I want to retire too. Do you want to buy my business as well?" And since I was already a pastor, doing premarital counseling and marriage counseling and individual counseling for a bunch of different reasons, I wasn't unfamiliar with the counseling industry and therapy. So I said, "Okay, I'll tell you what." At first, we said no because I wasn't interested. That wasn't our forte. But he gave me a price that I couldn't refuse. So I said, "I'll tell you what, I'll pray about it and give me a copy of your last 3 years of your P&Ls, and we'll go back and we'll pray about it, look over it, and we'll see what we'll see." So after looking over that information, my wife and I decided to go ahead and do that. And so I bought Recovery Unlimited, which is where the owner at now, in 2022. I have a master's degree in IT and honorary doctorate degree. And this is the hardest job I've ever had in my life, but it
Yeah.
is also one of the most rewarding, and being able to see people's lives change, with the addiction that people have, and being able to come through our programs and recover through that addiction, whether it's drugs or alcohol or some other forms. It gives you a sense of accomplishment, a sense of pride, a sense of meaning when you're able to be used by God to help people get through this addiction and be victorious and successful over it. So that's my background.
That's amazing. I think that's a very, very great, introduction. It definitely sounds like it's been a journey, but it's interesting how it kind of, it fell in place, but it was also, it seems like it was a right thing for you to almost like, not inherit, but, get this consulting business and, embrace it and, still love it at the same time. And I noticed that pattern is how rewarding all of this kind of work is. I've talked to a bunch of different people even today. I mean, I was talking to an acupuncturist this morning and she was saying the exact same thing. And then an herbalist right before this. It's that same thing. And it is truly amazing. But yeah, maybe take me a little bit more into the business, what you guys do, who you help, and
Sure.
we can
So
go from there.
about 95% of our clients are court ordered. So they've gone through the court system, and whether it's the judge or a lawyer or parole officer or probation officer or diversion officer or even a caseworker will refer them to us. So those are our referral sources. And so, like I said, 95% of our clients are court ordered. And as they're court ordered, they come in and they'll get assessment. So one of the first things that we got to do is get an assessment to find out where they're at and what type of level of care that they're required. And so we don't do any treatment without knowing what that level of care needs to be, because there's too many different types of levels of care. You could have no treatment, you could have a 1-day class, you could have a level zero point 0.5 early intervention, a level 1 outpatient, a level 2 intensive outpatient, a level 2.5 partial hospitalization program, a level 3 inpatient. So there's all these different levels of care, and we got to know what is the right treatment for this person. So that starts off with the assessment, and we do all kinds of assessments. We do drug and alcohol assessments, DUI assessments, mental health assessments, adolescent assessments, anger management assessments, and we're looking forward to expanding some additional services in some other areas as well. So assessment is where it starts. And then once we know on the drug and alcohol side, if they need treatment, then we'll let them know that we provide those services here. And we're strictly an outpatient, which means no overnight stays. And we'll provide those classes here. Our main classes are the level 1 and level 2, level 1 outpatient and level 2 intensive outpatient. And we provide a lot of that type of services for drug and
And is
alcohol.
everything in person for the most part? Is there anything online?
We do all group counseling. So
Hmm.
our forte has been group counseling, but we also, in part of doing the group counseling, we have designed and built into our program were one-on-ones, because we have to go one-on-ones with the individual to talk about their individual treatment plans that are customized to
Hmm.
that specific person, and we can't do that really in a group. That has to be on a one-on-one basis. So we also provide those one-on-ones, and that also provides opportunity to be able to talk to that individual on a one basis about some individual things that you don't want to talk about in a group anyways. And then we do provide, we used to provide a lot of telehealth on the treatment side. Our model has shifted just differently, not because of we don't want to do it, but because of the nature and character of the clientele. We need to be flexible with who's requesting it and what type of timeframes that they have opened and what their needs are. So some of them, a couple of years ago, we had a bunch of clients who needed treatment during the weekend. So we had a telehealth weekend. Well, that is since gone, and that demand is no longer there anymore. So now we
Hmm.
have demands for people
It's
who
more
need,
so it's more of like a periodic thing. When it's needed,
yeah,
you guys will go and you'll provide whatever resources are needed.
right. We want to stay flexible to their needs and be able to be moldable to whatever their time frame or whatever their openings and their lifestyle happens to be.
Hmm.
And then we
Got it.
have, if you look at our name, Recovery Unlimited, it says addiction treatment and anger management. So we've been doing both ever since the inception. We started in 1995 and we're celebrating our 30th anniversary, but we do anger management as well. So we do both on the addiction treatment and the anger management side. We do adults and adolescents.
Very, very, very interesting. Do you have any stories from me that maybe like stick that with you taking on this business early on and like the journey behind it? Because what I like to cover on here as well is obviously going in on the care that you provide and everything you're able to do. But then also touch in a little bit on the business side and just like the journey that you've went through with running it. Because I think people learn from other stories.
Sure. So I'll share with you my story taking on this position. So like I said, this is the toughest job I've ever had in my life. It's a lot of different hats. So over the years, I've developed a lot of different hats. Being a web developer, being a publisher, being a pastor, being a businessman. I have 5 businesses. So it's a lot of different hats. This position, this job function incorporates all of that. And I have to do the HR, hiring and firing. I have to do payroll. I have to do AP and AR. I have to do contract negotiations. I have to do contracts with insurance companies and billing, dealing with individual clients and their specific needs, dealing with the referral sources and building relationships and sending and corresponding back and forth with reports back to them for the courts, as well as the marketing and the building those personal relationships with my referral sources. And again, on the IT side, all of the IT stuff I do myself. So I do all of
Hmm.
the telephones and all the websites and all the marketing, all the printing materials, in addition to all the regular utilities. I do all that myself, and as well as the maintenance. So I do all the maintenance. So I'm a one-man wrecking machine. I do
So
it
you
all.
do everything for the most
Yeah.
part. And then I'm assuming maybe your wife a little bit as well.
No, my wife is
No,
a
just
stay-at-home
you.
mom. We have 6
Okay, very
kids. She's a
nice.
stay-at-home mom. We do
Wow.
homeschooling, but I have 10 employees, and we have a healthy. We're trying to create a smooth running, well-oiled machine, and it's
That
taken
is
a long
amazing.
time. As a part of my background, also as a professional business analyst, I want to find the problem, find a solution for it, fix it, and then move on, and know that
Mhm.
it's fixed and that it's running efficiently and smooth and beneficial. So I also have a phrase that I've coined: automation equals monetization. The more I can automate my processes, the better return on investment we'll have, because
Well,
we're not
at
using
the
as
end of it,
much labor.
yeah, yeah, the more efficient, the better, 100%. So what is, I don't know, maybe like what's like a framework that you use for, decision making to make sure you're maintaining efficiency
Yeah.
and,
So
gaining that edge.
yeah, a lot of what I need to do is constantly go back and look at our process and do process improvement. Look at something and say, does this area need to be improved? And if so, what's the most efficient way of going about it? And a lot of talk about AI. AI helps out tremendously, especially when it comes to the EMR side, the electronic medical record system.
Hmm.
The ones that are in the cloud these days. Our EMR has AI incorporated into it and it helps us to do our jobs a little faster, more efficient. But one thing we always need to keep in mind about AI is that it can make mistakes, and we don't want to use AI as a replacement for our own eyes. Everything has to
Never.
be
No.
double checked with our own eyes, because at the end of the day, I'm responsible for it. It's my signature. And if I substitute and be lazy and let something else
There it is.
do
Yep.
that job, and I put my signature on it, well, now I become liable for it if it's
Yep.
wrong. So I have to make sure, no matter what I do, I take my double set of eyes and look at it and make sure it's accurate.
Yeah. I was just going to follow up and say it really is just lazy at the end of the day if you don't at least just look over the entire thing as well. Because you can have, I say this because, I have a lot of these conversations all the time and, AI has been a very hot topic recently. And people just think you can just tell it a task to do it, everything's going to be perfect. And they almost think that AI can read, what you want. Like it can understand the vision that you want and just produce it. Boom. You don't have to do anything else. It's just good at doing the heavy lifting, doing the grunt work. And then you go in, you use your human eye, like you're saying, and you polish everything up and you get that final revised version. It just ends up saving you so much time, but it is just pure laziness when you want to just put a prompt in, expect it to give you the result and just do nothing else. And then you end up delivering, just a bad result.
Yeah, exactly. And it only takes one time out of 100. You could be right 99 times, and that one time that you mess it up, that's the time
Hmm.
that everybody remembers.
Hmm.
And then it ruins your reputation. So we're trying
Yeah.
to improve our quality of service, as well as um, our whole production and focus. We did a big, humongous cultural change here in our company, emphasizing quality and building relationships.
That is amazing. So what would you say, I don't want to call it like a mantra, but for lack of a better term, like what it's like the philosophy around, the brand, I would say, because this is more of like a brand because there's a system behind this. This isn't just any consulting group or anything like that. It sounds like this is a little more sophisticated.
Yeah, our model is addiction treatment. So we have licensed addiction counselors who, when people come into our doors, we want to help them stop their addiction and then help the process as they go through the recovery process. And then when they're done with our treatment program, they can say they're victorious, they've they're successful and they're 100% clean. And that's our goal, is to come alongside and help them through that process to be successful. Because we don't just want to be a place where we push a bunch of information and expect them to be able to assimilate it and use on our own. Well, we are a place where we provide them a toolbox. And this toolbox is, you're going to have triggers 24/7. No matter where you go, you're always going to have triggers. Something's going to trigger you. And so if you're going to be triggered, what are you going to use for that trigger? Well, we provide this toolbox of all these different tools, the coping mechanisms. And when that trigger comes, you can open up your toolbox, grab a coping mechanism to address that trigger, to help you overcome that trigger so that you don't relapse back into your addiction. And that's our goal. That's our model, is helping them through that process.
And what does it look like? Like, I guess hypothetically, like say I was like a patient of yours, or I don't know, maybe it's a bad way to refer to it, but you were helping me. What does the process kind of look like? I mean, I know we already said like the assessment and all that kind of stuff. But like, I guess ongoing, what does it usually take to, achieve results? I know this is very individual question. Maybe it might not be the right question because we had already said about HIPAA and all that kind of stuff, because you might need like a story, but
Yeah,
I
so
don't know if you see where I was going with that.
a high overview of, so someone will come in or call into our office and schedule an assessment, and then they'll come in for an assessment, and we'll give them the assessment, and we'll find out what level of care that they need. Suppose they need a level 2 intensive outpatient, and they say, okay, here's my insurance card, and we can apply the whole fee to the insurance, and they'll come in 3 days a week. Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings from 6 to 9 p.m. And so level 2 IOP requires a minimum of 9 hours. So they'll have 9 hours of group counseling, and then maybe 1 or 2 hours of individual counseling during that week period as well. And once they finish that, they'll move into what we call continuing care. But also during that duration, they have UAs, urine analysis tests. Now we do 2 different types. We have urine tests, and we also have oral swabs, both of which will go back to our independent toxicology lab to get the test results. Because at the end of the
Hmm.
day, you can look at someone. Sometimes you can tell if they're on drugs or not, and sometimes you can't. And the only definitive way is do a UA test. And so our UAs will tell us whether that person has been abstinent and stopped their addiction, or whether we're watching that degradation, decrease in their usage. Now, sometimes they stop, but it's still in their bloodstream, and it takes maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I've seen it as much as 2 months for it to come out, THC to come out of a person's bloodstream. So
Mm.
the individual also takes in consideration as to how fast it comes out. So the UAs during our treatment will do a random UA test to find that out, to determine it. And once they complete the total duration of our intensive outpatient treatment sessions, which is 24, then they go into what we call continuing care. And that is a transition that we have. When you go through treatment, it's really intense. It's a lot of information, and you're trying to be abstinent. But then when you complete that, it's like this hard stop. So we provide this continuing care for 6 weeks to try to transition them back into regular life, to be a contributing member of society, and talk about things that on a everyday level, everyday scenarios that they're going to meet with, whether it may be financial stuff, maybe it's rebuilding relationships that they broke in, maybe it's personal health and wellness, maybe it's finding places to develop communities like churches or AA meetings.
So you're definitely providing them with that toolbox to go out and, I guess, reform their life and however they may choose.
Right. So, yeah, the all of these lessons in this continuing care focuses on one thing: to give you additional tools, so that way you can use them when you have these triggers come up, for the express purpose of not falling back into relapse. So all these tools helps us to not relapse. You're always going to have risk of relapse, but these tools will help you to prevent that. And so that's part of what this is. And so these tools are different tools that you won't get inside your normal treatment. These are tools that you need as you start transitioning back into normal life. And then
So are
once,
these tools like a little more personalized, or are they
yes, well, I wouldn't say personalized, but they're more,
everybody's going to have their own kind of thing?
yeah, like finances. We talk about the stress of finances because everybody gets stressed out about not having enough
Hmm.
money, and They go to court, and lo and behold, they got another $500 bill, and they don't have the money for it. Well, now they get
Yeah.
stressed, and then when they get stressed, they tend to have this desire to go back and use again. Well, then we can tell them,
Mm.
okay, so here's a tool that you can use that's tangible to help you to address that stress. Um, part of a great example is counting backwards from 10. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4,
Interesting.
3, 2, 1. And your brain has to take an exerted effort to think about that going
You're
backwards.
detaching it from that thought. Yeah.
So all the exerted effort that your brain has to do to think about the next number going backwards, it's totally different than going forwards. Because I could talk say
One,
1 to
two, three, four,
10
five, six, seven. Yeah.
super fast,
Super fast. Yeah.
unconsciously. But going backwards, your brain has to think about it real hard. And then as a result, by the time you get down to 1, whatever that trigger was in your mind, it's gone. So it's a scientific
Interesting.
fact that is a little tool that we provide people. Journaling is a great way to be
Hmm.
able to handle stress. And so
Hmm.
I've written a book called 31 Days of Devotions for Dudes, and another one called 31 Days of Devotions for Chicks. And so it's a primer to get people to start engaging and doing little devotions and doing little journaling, and just to get them started. So they say that 23 days creates a habit, right? And so if they can just
Yes.
start for 31 days, then it creates a habit to moving forward to doing some bigger ones. And at
That's
least it
amazing.
creates a different lifestyle. And so there's different
Yes.
types of tools. There's an intellectual tool and a physical tool. So the intellectual tool is the counting backwards from 10 down to 1. A physical tool is an actual book that I hand them and say, here is your 31 days of devotions for dudes that you can use this as a physical tool. And we
And like
provide all
these,
these.
oh, go ahead.
We provide all these tools that we can in our class. And then when they're done, we provide them a certificate of completion, and we'll provide a letter to the court system. So, and then we celebrate their victory, give them a coin and a little party, pizza party, and we celebrate with them because we want them to be successful and victorious and know that they're loved and supported through this whole process.
That is amazing. That is absolutely amazing. I love it. I was curious with journaling. In your experience, do you recommend like structure for journaling? I was also curious those devotional books if they had, I guess journaling prompts or anything like that, or if you just like what your take is with structured versus unstructured journaling. I guess.
I recommend structured journaling to get started because, like I said, once you get that 23-day habit developed, then you can branch off into individual journaling with maybe just your thoughts and different
For
focuses
sure.
and different emphasis. But you got to get started somewhere. And structured journal maybe once or twice gets you started in that right direction, gets you started thinking about different things to think about, like gratitude and reflecting on past experiences and writing letters to individuals that you've hurt. And all these different types of prompts in a structured journal helps tremendously to develop that practice, to develop that internal change in your lifestyle.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've had some good progress with journaling myself. It's a good one. It's tricky to get started for sure though. Everybody has their own struggles, I guess. Yeah, so I guess to kick back to the business side. One thing you'd said, you wear many hats. I love hearing that because I think a lot of people resonate with that statement. And there's a lot of people that just pick up things that they didn't really intend on wanting to do, but then end up with it. And sometimes they're unhappy with it. So I'm curious how you navigate, um, you know, switching from hat to hat, and then maybe like which hat is the heaviest. That makes sense in a more metaphorical
Yeah,
sense.
so at my place, Recovery Unlimited, my switching of hats come by me being a fireman. It's whatever fire pops up. That's the new hat that I got to put on.
Got it. So whichever fire is raging the hottest is what you go to.
Exactly. This industry, there's so much different things happening all at the same time. It is literally
Hmm.
juggling. I come into the morning, I might have 30 emails I got to respond to for referral sources and sending information back and forth, corresponding assessments or certificates or letters, update letters,
Hmm.
and maybe state or federal documents. And then we'll get phone calls, and the receptionist says the receptionist may not be able to answer that question, so they got to feed them over to me, and I got to address that issue and talk with it. I might have to talk physically face to face with a client or maybe a parent of an adolescent, and deal with it. Might have to pay a bill. I might have to go to the bank. Like today, I went to the bank and then I I went to my tax accountant, signed my business taxes today, and then after that, I went down and had lunch with a referral source that I could build relationships with lunch. And still, it's amazing how effective it is just to having lunch with someone, having face to face, and building those personal
Nowadays,
relationships.
having like, I mean, even a podcast recording like this is, still somewhat decent human connection, but face to face, you don't get enough of it anymore. It is truly amazing.
Yeah, and that also has to resonate with the fact that that's marketing. So the whole concept of marketing is you have a product or service that you provide, and you want your brand name to be in the forefront of the minds of that person when they need that product or service.
Hmm.
Your
You
name is
plant the seed.
yeah, your
Yeah, you
name is
plant
going
the
to be the one
seed.
that comes up. And so that's what
100%.
building relationships with. You develop friendships, and when they need the product or service, they're going to call me, or they're going to refer their people over to us. And so building relationships is extremely important in this industry.
100%. That's why you always make sure you're a good person as well to everybody. For any particular people out there, you always be a good person to everybody because you never know who. It's such a small world. Everybody knows everybody.
Yes, everybody knows everybody. And if you develop a bad reputation, all the referral sources will hear about it and not send their people over to you. So again,
Oh, I
our
bet.
clientele is 95% court ordered. And if we get a bad reputation, then the court is not going to send their people over to us, and they're
No.
going to send them to our competitors. So we have to make
Yeah.
sure that we're doing exerted effort to provide quality service, building relationships, and providing the documents and the reports that the courts needs in a timely manner. Communication is extremely important in the collaboration and correspondence that we have back and forth.
Got it. Got it. So when it comes to your day to day, you were kind of giving a little insight on this. It's very, I don't want to say scattered, but it's a little all over the place. Is there a lot of structure to your day to day, or is it kind of you're at whatever fire needs to be put out?
Well, for me personally, since I do so much, my day, I come in and create a list of things that I want to accomplish that day. Top 10 list of things. Okay, I need to get this done. I need to get that. I need to get this billing sent out today. And so those mandatory things I have to get out through the day. But then knowing that there's a bunch of other things that's going to already pop up, you got to plan for that. You can't plan for or hazard. You can't plan for a day of havoc. You can't unplan for it. You have to plan for it. You have to plan for
Hmm.
something to unexpectedly arise, because it always does.
You plan for the worst, expect the best.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So then you're prepared. You're prepared for whatever. Sorry.
So we are a for-profit corporation, an S corp, and so as being a small business, we have a smaller staff compared to some of the other bigger corporations that's in this industry. That might be a nonprofit corporation that has millions of dollars in the bank with lots of staff, and then they can divvy out the tasks accordingly. Well, for a smaller brick and mortar business like ours, more people have to take on more tasks. And
Hmm.
it just becomes the nature of the industry.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt. So whenever you got the business, and it was like 2022, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So whenever you got the business, was it at the same kind of stage and like where it was like the previous owner basically filling the same exact role you had, or were there other people on the team, or kind of what's the transition been? Have you has the practice like stayed pretty much the same, or what have the changes been since you've inherited it?
We've had a ton of changes. Okay. So previously, the previous owner, they went through COVID. And once COVID hit, everything went online. And so telehealth. And so actually, the numbers of occupancy went through the roof, and it was a booming industry. But then
Hmm.
when COVID ended, our local county and court systems required everybody to go back into person. And so then those numbers dropped off tremendously. So then I bought it in 2022, which is right after COVID. So being an IT guy, a master's degree in IT, I came in and they were still doing paper charting, writing everything.
Mm.
And I'm looking at the
Okay.
processes, and they write something on a piece of
What the
paper,
hell
and
is
then they
this?
retype it out on Word, and then they would print it out, and then from the printer, copy
It was
machine,
just a waste of time. Yeah.
and they would scan it and then re-upload it, and then they'd email it a PDF. And I'm like, this is crazy. We're going digital. I said, I'm
Just
an
do it
IT guy.
once in the computer. It's done.
Yeah, I said, I'm an IT guy. We're going digital. And so that was a big change,
I
changing a lot
bet.
of processes. And so a lot of elderly employees couldn't handle the change. And so as of today, we have 100% all new different staff, people who are
So no original staff at
We
this
have no
point.
original stuff.
Okay.
I take that back. We do have a couple of people on when it comes
Okay.
to the addiction side. It's all new staff. Our original owner, this gal who came up with the concept or the term, the business name, Recovery Limited. She is still with us today, and she signs off on her Medicaid stuff. And so she's our kind of our main rendering provider, and she's a fantastic person, and she helps us out tremendously. And she's the main person who's still with us today. On the anger management side, we still have all of those same staff because they didn't have to deal with the same issues that the addiction treatment side had to deal with. On the addiction treatment side, we had to have everything run through the EMR and a lot of correspondence and things like that, and insurance. On the anger management side, that's all straight cash and straight classes. And so we didn't have to deal with a lot of that stuff. And those individuals that we had on the anger management side staff, we still all have all the same people.
And I guess fast forwarding to now, is there any part of the business that feels like it depends on you personally to keep going? Like, do you feel like if you were to step out of the business and or like sell the business to somebody else, that somebody would be able to do the same thing that you did?
I could train someone to do all the things that I do. It would be beneficial if this specific company grew enough to the point where I could have a designated director. So right now I'm also wearing the director hat. If I could step back and be just like the CFO and taking care of all the finances, and then have another person be the director of the counselors and some of the addiction treatment side, that would be beautiful, tremendous, and
So
that
kind
could
of
go
like
on
split
forever.
split the workload, split the workload for the most part with another, leader type position.
Yeah. So when I first bought Recovery Unlimited in 2022, that's what I did. I had a friend of mine come in, and he was a director. He went out of state and became an associate pastor. He got a great opportunity to do that. And so we highly encouraged that as well, because it was just a great opportunity for him. And then I had to step back from being just the CFO and owning my other six businesses to me being focusing here with all these different hats for the time being. As of this year, we're in the black and we're moving forward. And we just received a big grant from the city of Wichita, and we're looking forward to hopefully another grant here. We'll find out in May 6th, and then another couple of months. Huge grant if we get it. We'll definitely be expanding and growing and moving from our brick and mortar store here in the strip mall into branching out into the rural areas, because that's where I think the future belongs. So when you think about the whole industry, if everything was working correctly, the court system was working correctly and helping people get through this, and the treatment centers are doing their jobs and helping people get through this, and the police and whatever are stopping the drugs, then there would be a decrease in this whole industry. Well, if there's a decrease, well, then there goes a lot of our clientele. We
Hmm.
need to come up with a plan for the future to be able to be viable still going through the future. So we're putting a lot of our one-day classes that we have online and making them interactive courses. So that way people who live rurally in Kansas will have access to those classes. Because right now, if you're living on the border of Colorado and you have a court case or you have to have a class in Cedar County, it's a 6-hour drive. And that's a big ask to have someone to drive 6 hours to go to
Hmm.
a class and turn right back around and go drive another 6 hours. So we want to be able to reach the people where they're at instead of just sitting here waiting for people to come to us. We want to go to where they're at to help them and meet their needs. And I think that's where AI can helping out with building, interactive programs online and processing that. So that's where our future lies.
So where do you see, the practice like 2 to 3 years from now then? And like the vision of it expanding into rural areas, maybe expanding online or any of that, utilizing AI, that kind of thing. I'm curious what your future is for it.
Well, it's interesting enough. We just saw yesterday President Donald Trump sign, I think, executive order or something requesting marijuana to be reclassified from level 1 to level 3. And the state of Kansas is encompassed by 4 states that have medical approved marijuana: Colorado, Nebraska, Missouri, and Oklahoma. Well, Kansas is a clean state. We have nothing. Everything's illegal. So
But it's in the center of them, yeah.
the whole atmosphere, their whole industry is going to change pretty soon, and we're not exactly
Mm.
sure what's that going to look like. But if you were to gauge what it looks like in some other states, like if Colorado, that industry has actually exploded because more people got addicted, and this industry and the addiction industry, addiction treatment industry, kind of exploded and grew exponentially because it got opened up. So that might be a model of what it might look like in the future for Kansas. I don't know yet. I
Hmm.
just know that we need to make sure that our processes are streamlined and efficient and scalable. So that way, if we do need to expand and grow, we'll have that capability.
And then let me ask you this: if you can, I guess, keep that 2 to 3 year, vision in mind as well, and like assume that you had one thing completely solved and like off your plate, running by itself, in the future, what would you want it to be?
I would want the 1 day classes to be running online. That would be it. And we're going to
Okay,
also
got it.
expand our addiction treatments. So if you look at our name, you do a search and you see Recovery Limited, and it'll say addiction treatment and anger management. Well, that word addiction encompasses a lot of different things other than just drug and alcohol. We have gambling addiction. We have smoking addiction, nicotine addiction. We have porn addiction. We have food addictions. There's a lot of different lifestyle addictions that are out there, and we want to be a house that encompasses providing a lot more of those different types of addictions to be able to treat people. And I think in the future, that's where we have some opportunity to grow in, and is providing more different types of addiction treatment.
Yeah, I'm curious. What advice either would you have somebody that's wanting to go down maybe either a similar path, or advice you would have for for yourself, like maybe a couple years back?
If I was to provide advice for myself a couple of years back, I would have liked a roadmap or some type of guide or some type of checklist, because
Hmm.
when I went into this, I had to discover everything on my own, and I didn't know where to look. And so over a period of time, over a year might pass, and then all of a sudden something comes up that's broken. I'm like, oh, I wish I should have looked at that a year ago, and I didn't even know. And had I had like maybe a checklist, I could have said, okay, I need to go check this thing out. I need to go check that thing out.
Just have clarity at the end of the day.
Yeah, because there's so many different
Yeah.
moving pieces in this industry. You have your clients, you have your normal business with employees and human resources and payroll, and you have your
Hmm.
utilities, and then you have the court systems, and then you have the people who are that you correspond with in the court systems, or uh, and then you have
I
your
know it's
insurance.
a lot. It's a lot.
Even
Yeah.
insurance itself, submitting claims to insurance is crazy.
Hmm.
We get denials of claims for the stupidest, craziest things. It just blows your mind. One day, I got this sheet of paper from one of the largest insurance companies. We had an assessment paid 100%. The next line was a date of service, a treatment day. They paid 100%. The next treatment service, they paid half of that. The third treatment day, they paid a half of that again. And then the
Jeez.
fourth treatment day, they paid zero. They denied it. And then the fifth one, they paid it 100%. I'm like, what's the rationale there? That makes no sense. And that's the kind of
uh,
things that we have to deal with insurance. We're pulling teeth just to get them to pay the reimbursement that they owe us.
yeah, I think there's a lot of people that have to deal with insurance all the time. I hear it, pretty often. I deal with a lot of, different practitioners and all this kind of stuff, and insurance doesn't really sound too fun
No, it's not.
to
It's
deal
the
with.
bane of my existence right now.
Yeah, I bet. But yeah, where can people find you? Find Recovery Unlimited, and follow along with what you guys are building here.
Sure. You can find us at recoveryunlimited.com, and we have tons of resources on our website. We're trying to put more and more services for every service that we have, trying to have a specific designated page for that service. So provide as much information to the client that's looking for that information as possible. We're trying to expand our social media presence as well. And you can find my books on Amazon.com. You can type in my name, Dade Ronan, Daderonan. You can find all my books. I've written over 14 books. Not all of them are on Amazon, but you can find the devotionals that I've written, the 31 Days of Devotions for Dudes, 31 Days of Devotions for Chicks. And I got some
Hmm.
more books that I'm working on right now. One of the books I'm working on talks about my personal testimony of being addicted to vodka. So it's alcohol addiction, the struggles with generational alcoholism, and my family history. So, and then we're providing three parts to that one. One is the story, And then second is the problem with generational alcoholism. And then third is the solution to it. So there's a solution for it, but we need to help people to be educated and understand how to address that solution. So that's where we're at.
Awareness is huge. Anything else you got to share with us? Any last notes?
My last point would be that this world is hard enough as it is, and people tend to say yes to the wrong things and not say no to the bad things. And as a result, they get in trouble. One of the things we need to say yes to is to God. We need to get out of ourselves and ask for help. Help is readily available. People want to help. God wants to help. God is that perfect father. He's like the prodigal son story in the Bible, where he's the father waiting with his arms wide open for you to come back to him. And he loves you and he has a plan for you and he wants to receive you back in his kingdom. But you got to recognize that you're in a situation that's really bad and admit that you've made some bad decisions and confess and get your heart right with God and come back to God. And that's the only place that you'll find forgiveness and restoration and peace. And there is light at the end of the tunnel. There is encouragement for those who will seek him. And God has a plan for you because he loves you and he doesn't want to leave you. In fact, the Bible says God's not willing that any should perish, but that all should have eternal life. That's God's will. And if we'll come to that realization that God is for you, he's on your side, he's not against you, then we'll have a better outlook in life and we'll be encouraged and we'll be built up and we'll have a successful and fruitful life as opposed to being captive and in change to our addictions. And a lot of times we won't say yes to God, but then we will say yes to our addictions, and we won't say no to the temptations. But if we will say yes to God, then our whole life and outlook will be totally different. And I guarantee you, if you say yes to God, your life will change for the better.
Way to end that off, Dade. That was amazing. Like I said, that wow. And I really appreciate everything that you shared with us today. I think everybody can benefit from what we just went over. So thank you so much for your time today.
Well, thank you so much, Noah, for the opportunity. I greatly appreciate it. And God bless you, my friend. Have a great day.
Of course, you as well.